This is an album page created by using the templated component. In this tutorial, I am going to create this page from the scratch. Now let's start it. This is a Blazor WebAssembly project. I just created it with default settings. In this tutorial, I am going to explain templated components. I will explain it by using an example. Namely, I am going to create an album by using the templated components in the Blazor WebAssembly application. In general, an album is a collection of photos or images. Therefore, in order to display some photos in the album, we need some data sources. Namely, we need photo data sources. In order to keep this tutorial as simple, I have prepared a static JSON data source to display in the album. Namely, I have prepared this static JSON data source to display in the Blazor templated component. This is an array. Inside this array, there are multiple objects. First, I will copy this and create the same data source inside the project. Copy this. I will put this data source inside webroot folder because inside webroot folder we have a sample data folder. I will put it inside this sample data folder. First clear this, paste it here. Now save it. Now I have created the photo items JSON data source. Inside this array, there are multiple JSON objects. Each JSON object represents a photo or an image. It has full path, title, description, width, and height. In the photo object here, I am taking photos from unsplash.com. Therefore, I have assigned Unsplash's URL to the full path. In the next section, I am going to create a photo item component based on this JSON object. Namely, that photo item component should have full path, title, description, width, and height parameters. In general, components resides inside the pages folder. Now let's create it inside the pages folder. I don't need this. Now let's write component parameter based on the JSON object inside the JSON data source. This is the JSON object representing one photo. Therefore, I need to create component parameters based on these parameters. Namely, save it. Now I have created component parameters based on the JSON object inside the JSON data source. If you're new to the component parameters, please see previous tutorials. Now I need HTML code for this component because I am going to display image and its heading and its description in the UI. Therefore, I need some HTML code to display it. Actually, in order to save time, I have prepared the HTML code for this component. This is the HTML code for the photo item component. Therefore, I just copy it, paste it here. Now let me explain this. Save this. First, we have an image item here because we are going to display photo or image in the UI. Therefore, we need an HTML image item. This is the width, and we have it here, and this is the height, and we have it here, and this is the full path of the photo or image, and we have it here as a component parameter. Then we have heading. This is the heading, and then finally we have description, and this is the description component parameter. Therefore, all of these directive attributes comes from the outside of this component. This is the width of the component, and it equals to the image width. Now save it. In the next step, I am going to create the templated component, the main goal of this tutorial. Now let's create the templated component. Because it is a template, it should be resided inside the share folder. First, I will write the code, then explain it line by line. First, start from the C# code portion. Save it. Now I need to create the HTML portion. In order to save time, I have prepared the HTML portion. Therefore, first I copy this. And paste it here. Then I will explain it. Save it. Now I have completed all code, including HTML and the C# codes. First, we have C# code portion. Inside the C# code portion, we are using parameter. In this templated component, we are going to convert an ordinary HTML table to a templated component. Actually, instead of table cells, I am using this directive attribute. Namely, I am using this header parameter. This is a parameter. Type is render fragment because it's a fragment of the UI. In other words, it's the rendering portion of the UI. Therefore, I am using a table header instead of table cells. Then here we have table row. About this and use this cell td. Let's say I have commented out this and using this td elements here. Now we have tr element. Inside this tr element, we have td elements. Instead of this column cells, if I use a parameter, at that time, I can accept some value from outside this component. But in this case, I could not accept any value from outside of this component. Therefore, I just deleted this. Instead of that, I open this. I am going to use this row template parameter. This is a parameter. We have it here, and this parameter type is render type. It's going to render t items. This t items is a generic item. It could be anything. Therefore, inside the row template, if I templated it, I can display anything. Now the logic is same for the table footer. Now let's explain this. Actually, I am using here two simple loops. One is using row and one is using column. In fact, we have list here. This is the list we are going to display inside this component. Actually, this list is one-dimensional. Now I am changing it into two-dimensional by using this full loop. For example, I am going to change from this one-dimensional list into this 2D array. Namely, I am going to display the pictures or I am going to display the images just like this. Therefore, I changed it. Let's say inside this list we have 8 elements. Therefore, I just divided it. 2 rows, 4 columns. The first row, second row. Each row have 4 elements here. Therefore, I have converted 1D list into 2D array. We should remember that row multiplied by columns equal to the total number of the items inside the list. Therefore, I have 2 rows and 4 columns here. The total is 8 there. Therefore, I have converted 1D list into 2D array in order to display in the UI. I have explained the HTML code and the display logic here. This is the header portion, and this is the row portion, and this is the footer portion. Header, row, and the footer. Because this table already converted into table template, therefore we are going to display any value. Namely, we are going to display generic item inside this component. Then we have row here and we have columns here. I have used it in order to convert the 1D list into 2D array in order to display the pictures on the album. Next step, I am going to create the album by using this templated component. Now let's create the album page. I will create the album page inside the pages folder. First, I will write the code, then I will explain line by line. First, we need a photo object. Therefore, I will create a photo class. As we know, inside the photo, we have some properties. For example, inside the photo object, we have full path, title, description, width, and height. Therefore, now I have created a photo class. Our data source is an array. Therefore, I need to declare one photo list. Now, let's get the data from the data source. We have static data source here. Now, I am going to read that data source into this photo item list. Therefore, I need some service. I am going to use HTTP client. Now we have the photo list. Now let's use the templated component we just created. This is a templated component we just created. It has header, row template, and the table foot template. Now we are ready to display the image inside this my table template. Therefore, first we need to give the array to display it. Because we have items, I assign this photos list. I will explain this context later. I am going to display in 2 rows, therefore, and the column is 4 column. Now let's fill the table header. Now I have a title album page with templated Blazor WebAssembly component. And then I have a line here. Now let's fill the row template. Because this is a row template, this itself it's a row tr element. Therefore, I just write the td element here. That's it. Now let's fill the table foot. I am taking the pictures from unsplash.com. Therefore, I would like to give a credit here. Save it. Now I have completed the HTML portion of this page. Namely, I have displayed the image in the album page. This is the row template, and inside the row template, I have called it the photo item object. Okay, now let's explain this. First, I have created a photo class because in the data set we have JSON object. This is the JSON object and this is an array. This JSON object represents a photo. Therefore, I created one photo class. The class's property are corresponding to the JSON data sets object. We have full path, title, description, width, and height. Therefore, same thing I have inside this photo class. Then, because that data source is an array, therefore I declared one list here, photo list. After that, I have override the uninitialized async method of this component. Inside this method, I am getting the data by using the HTTP client. This is the data source. Now I am getting the data by using HTTP client. And now in this photos list, we have all the pictures to be displayed. My template table has items, therefore I have assigned this list. Then I have created a context. I will explain this later. Then I have assigned it to rows because I am going to display in 2 rows, so therefore I assign it 2. Then each row I am going to display 4 images or 4 pictures. Therefore column number is 4. And I have added some page title in the table header. After that, I have declared the photo item and displayed inside the row template. In the footer portion, I have give credit to the unsplash.com. Finally, the context attribute is very important. Now let's see it in detail. This is the my template code portion. We just saw that. We just use that inside my album. First, I assigned the photos list to the item. Actually, this context represents one item inside this list. One item inside this list represents the context. Therefore, I assigned one photo here. This is the context. Then inside the template, I am using this photo. Photo, full path, photo title, photo description, photo videos, and the photo height. And I explicitly call it here. Now I have called this context in the my table template, namely in the template level. Actually, I also can call this inside row template. For example, here I am not explicitly using it inside the template level, but I am using it inside the row template because we are going to display elements inside row template. Therefore, it is possible to use, or it is possible to declare this context element inside the row template. In the above cases, we have used the context element in the component level. Namely, I have called it inside this line. In the second case, I have called it inside the row template. Actually, I don't call it explicitly, but I have used it implicitly. Namely, I didn't call it explicitly anywhere, and I just use it. For example, if I use context and full path, context title, context description, context videos, and context. Therefore, the context is just representing the photo item. In other words, the context attribute is representing the photo class to be displayed inside this row template. In the above two cases, I have used it explicitly, but in this case, I may use it implicitly. Namely, I may use the context keyword without any explicitly declare. Actually, this context attribute implicitly pointing the photo item because we are assigning this photo list to the items inside the template. Therefore, automatically the context element getting the photo object. Next step, let's call this my album component in the side navigation bar of this application. We have the navigation bar here. I just copy this. This is the label. Save it. Before run it, I would like to summarize what I have done until now. First, I have created one photo items JSON data source. This is a static JSON data source, and this is an array. Inside this array, we have multiple objects. Based on this object, I have created photo item component to represent each JSON object inside the static data source. Then I have created my table template. Namely, this my table template is a templated component. Then by using this my table template, I have created my album page. Finally, I have called this my album component inside the side navigation bar. I have called it here. Hopefully it will work. Now let's run this application. Now it's running. Okay, let's see here. Okay, it's running. My album is here. Now let's click the my album. Hopefully it will display some images here. Now it works. If I refresh it, it will display new images here. Okay. Now we have completed album page with templated Blazor WebAssembly component. Thank you for your watching. Please subscribe.